very few large German corporations supported Hitler before 1933. Very few of them thought that the Nazis would be good for the German economy. I've written 2 books about German companies. One was the largest company in Germany, a big chemicals company called IG Farben. The other was a smaller chemicals company also located in Frankfurt, but still among the 100 biggest German firms, and that was called Degussa. In 1933, neither of these companies had a member of its board of directors who was also a member of the Nazi Party. At the moment Hitler was appointed, these companies were not backers of Hitler. By 1943, 10 years later, more than half of the members of the boards of these companies were Nazis, were members of the party. But more importantly, these companies were acting in ways that the Nazis wanted them to. They had large numbers of slave labor from concentration camps, many of them Jews. They were partners in the manufacture of Zyklon, the gas that was used to kill people predominantly at Auschwitz. They were otherwise engaged in Nazi crimes. They had both been involved in taking over Jewish-owned property in Germany and so forth. Now, one of the things we have to explain is what happened between 1933, when these people were not, if you will, pro-Hitler, and 1943, where whatever they think in their heart of hearts, they are behaving as if they're pro-Hitler, and they are serving the objectives of the Nazi regime. I think what happened was basically 3 stages. The first stage was a kind of abandonment of the Jews, which occurs right away in 1933-34, when these companies are under pressure from the Nazis to fire their Jewish managers, employees, directors. For the most part, they agree to do it. And they do it under duress to some degree. There are leaders of German industry who are arrested in 1933. They're put under pressure. An example I think of is Philipp Reimsma, who was the head of the largest manufacturer of cigarettes in Germany. He was arrested on suspicion of having been involved in bribing officials of the previous democratic government. The Nazis controlled the prosecutor's offices. They could trump up these charges. And so they put pressure on Reimsma, and they basically said, you know, you want to get these charges dismissed? Get rid of your Jewish partners, get rid of your Jewish employees. Or other companies were told, if you want to bid on public contracts, the biggest construction firm in the country was Philipp Holzmann. And the leader of Philipp Holzmann, the chairman of the operating part of the company, was a Jew named Charles Rosenthal. And the head of the board of directors was a man of the ownership family, whose name was also Holzmann. And the Nazis basically told Holzmann, if you don't get rid of Rosenthal, you won't be able to bid on any public contracts. So these are the pressures that they used. And in 1933-34, they were very effective. More than half of the Jewish directors of major companies are fired in 1933-34. First step is abandonment. And then in 1935, 36, 37, leaders of German industry find out that there's money to be made by persecuting the Jews. And what's more, because if Jewish company owners want to sell out their property, who's going to get it? You might be worried that a competitor would buy that property. And if the competitor bought it, their market share would increase. So you, as a member of the board of directors of one company, would say, well, maybe we have to buy it first. And see, competition then accelerated the process. Managers said to themselves, well, the government's going to pressure these people anyway. We might as well take advantage of it. So then that was the phrase of facilitating the persecution. And then when Germany starts expanding into occupied Europe, the same thing operates. Only in fact, in occupied Europe, the Nazis are more interested in having the government take over most of Jewish property. And what they throw a few bones to German industry, but industry is willing to pick up those bones and to take over property that had been, now we're not even talking about Jewish owners selling, we're talking about Jewish owners being simply dispossessed, their property confiscated, and the German corporations would pay the German state for these pieces of property. And the final stage is, of course, exploitation. And 1943, 1944, almost every major company in Germany is engaged in using Jewish slave labor from concentration camps to build new installations or to operate the installations they have. And here again, the pressure is not so much the anti-Semitism of the people making the decisions. The pressure is that there aren't enough laborers, because the German army had drafted roughly 11 million people, men, into the workforce between 1939 and 1944. Those people came, not a majority of them, but many of them, out of the factories. The producers, the owners of these industries, said, where am I going to get workers to keep producing the goods? And particularly because the government wants ever more goods in wartime. They want ever more cannon and so on and so forth. And so the solution became forced labor from the occupied countries and slave labor.